Hello YouTube. I built a Rev F Preamp. That's this guy up here. It is the circuit of the Mesa Boogie dual rectifier revision F from the input to the send jack, and from there it's going from that send jack out into the return of my revision G triple rectifier. And I built this mostly just kind of hear the subtle differences, and I've already played through this 1,000 times, so I kind of know what they are, but for the sake of science, I have everything set to noon on both, and I'm going to play a little bit through the red channel on that preamp going into the red channel of the revision G triple rectifier. There's a few subtle differences between the preamps of G and F, and this is just to kind of, either further or disprove any hype. I'll leave my bias out of it, but yeah. And then quick notes about how this works. In the G and in the F, the only difference between vintage and modern gain is 1 cap. And then in the power section, it's whether or not the negative feedback loop is engaged, which it is for vintage, or disconnected, which it is disconnected for modern. Because it's a preamp, I don't have the output section. I don't have that negative feedback loop, but I do have it in the G. So when I switch it from orange to red on the G, the negative feedback will do what it's supposed to do for the F. The other big difference is that the vintage mode presence control exists in the traditional place for presence to exist in a guitar amp, which is in the output section. The red channel has its own presence control in the tone stack, and I built it accordingly, but the effect of having the vintage channel is turning that presence knob all the way up to get that vintage sound. Because the circuit's still there, it just doesn't have a resistor, the knob, in between. It just goes straight from the capacitor that does it down to ground, and turning that all the way up will recreate that perfectly. I kind of like where it is right now, but everything's at noon. That's all at noon. Even though that preamp doesn't really come into effect, I will play through that, and then I'm gonna play through that. I might go red and orange. We'll see what happens, how long I can get away with doing this. But the fun parts. And for this, I've got the cab mic'd up with an SM57 because, everybody does. And then I also have the G going into a cab clone, and I'm going to kind of listen to both, but ultimately, whichever one sounds better will probably make it to this, video. What's some good old-fashioned tunes with the rectifier? little sound test there of how that's supposed to sound. Come on. All the gains there, obviously I'd like to turn it up a little bit. I like to turn the treble up a little bit, but I'm sticking with everything at noon religiously for your experience. And then going into orange. Okay, so flipped it up to vintage mode. It puts the extra capacitor out of the circuit, which is the appropriate value for red, takes it out for vintage, and then presents all the way up to recreate the tone stack in the orange channel. Kind of the same stuff. Definitely a volume drop, but again, output section is from the Rev G. Okay, and now juxtaposed to the G. So, a couple little connections here. Not the most scientific, but we're gonna do it. Okay, so this guy is off. Plugged in, turn the effects loop off. Still in G. Maybe I'll edit this video. We'll see what happens. But that lack of volume is gonna kill me, but I'm not touching the knobs. So let's go to red. All things set to noon. pretty sure I'm actually in red. So I still think there's a little bit of a volume drop from that F to this G. I'm going to compensate a little bit. Hey, let's get the other guy back on for a second. Oof. So when I turned up the volume a second ago on the G, I turned up the channel volume, not the loop active master. So this should still be the same volume as what that was. I will say that it is definitely a little thumpier juxtaposed, which I guess could be attributed to some little bit more tightness. Yeah, that's what I got for right now. Is it hype? You tell me.